Hey guys, so this is going to be the next tutorial in my series on how to make flexi creatures and things in Nomad Sculpt. And I'm going to show y'all how I finally joined together and kind of merge, export, and finish off my flexi files for printing. And so that's going to include how do I join together and export the models from Nomad Sculpt, and then also how I set up my models in the print slicer, make sure that they're flat on the bottom, fix non-manifold edges, all that. So hopefully this is helpful, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. So say we have finished modeling our flexi, we got it all in place, ready to go how we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the visible icons that I have, all the visible shapes layers. Over here, I'm going to unselect any of the non-visible ones because those are not ones that we're working with right now. Boom, I'm going to clone them, and I'm going to do this join. So we have those all joined into one, and I know I have masked areas in here, so I'm going to do that real quick so that we can move this up so I can show y'all something real quick. So from here, I'm going to go over to miscellaneous, decimate, and I want to get this number of little dot triangles under 500,000. Right now it's 2 million, so I'm going to decimate it. Wait. And we're going to decimate it again. Usually it takes 2 to 3 times. So now we're at 439K, so that's much more reasonable. And then from here, I will go down here. I usually export as an OBJ. You can also export as an STL. Export OBJ, Google Drive, which is where I throw all of mine. And that's how I do that in here. But another thing that some people get confused, and I played around with at first, is if you go, once you have joined all these together, you want to just join them. You can separate them later, so that helps. But another important thing is you do not want to voxel merge these guys, because then what happens, even though even if we voxel merge up to like 350 resolution, which is very high, look what happens. See how you got these little chunks of triangles trying to merge together? That is going to cause fusing in your flexi when you go to print it. That's going to show up in your slicer. So basically what happens is when you voxel something, it is going to try and redistribute those triangles in an even way, and also it's going to try and fill in any holes in your mesh where you're having non-manifold edges, all those things that normally is good. But when you have a flexi that you've joined into one piece and then you try to voxel it, it thinks that these little weird gaps in between all your different meshes, it thinks those are non-manifold edges or holes that it should try to fill. So that's why it does this weirdness in some of them, which is, like I said, it's going to cause issues with your printing. So you could have a beautiful, perfect flexi model that works exactly how it needs to, but then if you voxel it before you throw it into your slicer, all this is going to be fused in there. It's going to cause you issues. So that's super important to remember, and I'm going to show you how I do those last few finishing steps in the print slicer. So I'm going to downlist them from my Google Drive. Alrighty, now we're going to add our file. It's going to ask you, most likely, the object is too small, maybe in meters or inches. Do you want to scale to millimeters? I typically do yes, because Nomad and your print slicers typically work in different dimensions, different scales. And so, obviously your print slicers work in millimeters, Nomad Sculpt does not. So I'm going to go and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees because normally an OBJ will export it in at a vertical, not a horizontal. So there we have that. You see this little icon over here, has a little arrow, it says 812 non-manifold edges. We want to take care of that. That is happening because we did not voxel our model before we threw it in here. So I'm going to simplify the model because I want it to get lower triangles under 1 million for sure, but I do very high detail. That way I still keep all my sculpted details in here, but my mesh is more compressed. So then I can go over here and you either tap on that usually, or I can right click and do fix model, and that's going to get rid of those non-manifold edges that we did not fix by not voxeling it. And this usually takes a minute, so I'm going to let it do its thing. So now that I've finished repairing, and we're going to go over to this tool up here, which is the cut tool, because look, if we slice this guy now, This is basically not printable because all of these spots are floating. That's what all that dark blue means. And these are the only spots that are actually touching the build plate, which means this is all uneven, right? So to fix that, we're going to go to our cut tool. We are going to slide this down towards the bottom. And I like to pay attention to where are my links because I have a hole here for these leg links, right? So I want to make sure that I'm not getting too close and making the walls too thin right there. But I want to try and make it as high as possible to get as thick of leg links as I can there. So that looks about good. So then we're going to cut that. Now, cutting this sometimes will make those non-manifold edges come back again, so I want to fix that again. But it won't take nearly as long this time. So now, when we slice this file again, we have a nice, solid, even base that we can work on. I have a brim turned on here, but you can see all these big blue chunks are all of the first layers going down. So super easy. And then what I always do is I always go through, scroll through all my layers, make sure I don't have any links fused up anywhere, any issues going on that I need to fix. I scroll through all those layers, make sure there's not any weird floating bits. And then I will send it to print from here, and I will save it, export as an STL. And that is it. That's how I finish up my Flexis. And this last step in the slicer I do with all of my 3D printed designs when I go from Nomad, throwing them into here. So hopefully that makes sense and is helpful, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.